Hi, my name is Caroline Kermode, and my company is BP, otherwise known as British Petroleum. And so BP is one of the top 5 global companies in the oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry is a typically cyclical industry that is currently reaching its maturity or downturn. A lot of people argue that the reason it's reaching its downturn is from increasing problems with global warming and regulations within the government and then the industry itself. And so the industry has recently gone through an issue that is worrisome for investors and the oil and gas companies itself. The oil companies were able to rapidly increase their production of oil at a low cost to them, resulting in prices that the US could not compete with. This resulted in low profits for large oil companies, and the distribution of domestic oil was forced to decline, and that's why we had really low gas prices this past summer. And so there's not a lot that can differentiate one from its competitors in the oil and gas industry, as they all produce the same product. So the main things that can differentiate the companies are location, regulation laws, and the cost of extraction. And there's not a lot that oil companies can differentiate in this aspect, and so this leaves for a very competitive business. So BP is currently in their own downturn of their own cycle, and the rest of the industry is also in the downturn of their cycle. BP's biggest competitors, such as Chevron Corp, ExxonMobil, and Royal Dutch Shell, are following this cycle and are struggling to keep up with regulations and increase in production costs right now. BP's only advantages against its competitors are that they are constantly applying for new patents and currently have more than 4,500 granted patents around the world. And so, however, this is not enough to stay significantly above their competitors. BP's economic moat is relatively deep, even though their profits are not currently that high, and it is still difficult to get involved because of high entry costs and cyclical nature, and not very wide because there is not a lot of production differentiation. So looking at the financial statements for BP, it confirms that the company is in the downturn of their cycle. They've been struggling to maintain their profits, and however, they have been able to maintain their debts, so they do not sink further. And this is good because it means they've not been acquiring any unnecessary debt in order to stay afloat, and they're managing themselves pretty nicely. And then as we continue, when looking at BP's ratios, we can conclude that they have very high liquidity, which is obviously good because they can sell their assets to cover their liabilities. And their efficiency ratios have maintained consistency, which is good because it means that they have not fallen behind, but it also means that they have not made significant progress to boost their efficiency. And the revenue and profitability ratios have been steadily decreasing in the past 5 years. The industry has followed this trend as well and has also been decreasing in the past 5 years, showing that they are going through their own type of bear market. The management team at BP are all very experienced in the oil and gas industry and have previous experience, whether with BP or at other companies involved in the industry. And so the majority of their executives were appointed in January 2010, forcing them to lead BP through the oil spill in the spring of 2010. And so this shows their dedication and their ability to handle large amounts of stress on the company, which is really good and shows they know what they're doing. And because BP is in the downturn of their cycle, the executives put in a wage freeze to help save money. However, this did raise a red flag because during this wage freeze, the CEO gave himself a 20% raise. But when I looked at the rest of their red flags and any pitfalls, nothing else suspicious really came up, and anything could be explained from the downfall of their cycle. As for the intrinsic valuation, I am going to lay this one as a outlier because I came up with a PPS of 21 cents, and it just seems a little outlandish given that their current price is $33.52. And nothing in history shows BP ever dropping down to 21 cents, and I just don't think it's a good evaluation for their company. However, my relative valuation, I came up with a price of $30, which is much closer to BP's current price of, once again, $33.52. And even though it's pretty close, they're still overvalued a little bit, and taking both the intrinsic valuation and relative valuation into consideration, if I average them together, I get a price of $15.10, which is much further below their current price. So I came to the conclusion that BP is definitely overpriced for their right now. So overall, I would suggest holding until a later date and then possibly buying some after reevaluation. Given my intrinsic and relative valuations, BP is still overpriced and they are in the beginning of their downturn cycle, so I expect the price to continue to go down a little bit further. And although BP did have some suspicious activity when the CEO taking a bonus during a wage freeze, there were no other red flags or pitfalls that came up that would make me think anything horrible was happening within the company. And taking all of this into consideration, we can conclude that BP would be a safe investment once the price drops down lower, and then after reevaluation, I would say buy. Thank you.